They lied. And what glorious fucking garbage kino the good lord throws upon my lap this fine day. I fucking hate everything. FF7 Remake is the shit, the shovel, and the golden nugget. Every single inch of my stupid being is crying out at me to hate this game. It keeps shouting at me. It's garbage, Luke. It's trash. Why are you doing this to yourself? You're enjoying it. You're enjoying it now. Why are you enjoying it? You're part of the problem. Why are you British? Existential shit. And a very fair question. Why am I enjoying it sometimes? Well, I only enjoy some of it, but what I do enjoy is very, very enjoyable, and what I don't makes me want to jump out my window. It's got 5,000 different directors, and each one of them has their own unique vision of what their out-of-touch boomer ass thinks it needs to be in their eyes, all of which are various shades of narcissistic and not at all commensurate with what most fans seem to want from it to begin with. It's deliberately padded to artificially turn it into a 3-part odyssey of glorious mistakes, and it'd be approximately 10 hours long at best if you took out the fucking Cosmo Canyon of padding and filler. So what is it? A fucking waifu psyop? What do they mean by this? Why do I still look back fondly at that which should not have existed? Well, that is the point of this video. And though I'm not entirely sure from whence I spawned, I am sure that I am making it my life's mission now to ascertain why exactly I, in the face of an army of evidence, still find enjoyment in this absolute slop fest. My mind begins to play Connect 4 with itself and throws concepts at me in the form of potential answers to this most philosophical wankery, and it spells words like self-hatred and masochist. And while I do haphazardly oscillate between these two distinct potentialities, I also can't shake the feeling that despite all of the shit that I'm about to drop on this game, there are still very wonderful things that Square Enix did right here. The FF7 Remake is not a game that doesn't know what it is. It's a game that knows exactly what it is, but is perpetually told that it is not that, and to pretend that it's not, to ignore the objective reality of what it is. And it is through this cognitive dissonance that this entire fucked up picture is painted and presented. It knows it's a reboot. It knows it's not a remake. It knows it's more padded than the mental hospital walls. It even knows how it got there. And because of this, it's almost sentient at this point, trying to make the most out of every little thing, every little piece of its holistic puzzle that isn't preemptively broken by a design process that's caught in an eternal tug of war between the directors, the producers, and the scenario writers, and your mum. And I guess that's where the charm comes from. It's like a mid-football player who only scores long shots, only scores bangers. It makes a big deal out of things that other games might not care that much about, and even things that the original just kind of brushed off as well. Cloud in a dress, that was just a meme for the longest time, and now it's a historical event that people celebrate, like Christmas, because we're porn-sick degenerate filth and we know it. For decades, the stairs in Shinra used to be the place where Tifa calls Barrett a retard and you missed the 1990s for a while, and now it's a fully immersive 3D experience where the music goes all weird and wanky the more tired you get, and the atmosphere of the third dimension that gets added to the place makes you feel like you're really there in a way that's unique to that level of dimensionality. It's like FF15 and 13 too, and insert basically every other modern Final Fantasy game that ever and never existed, in the sense that it's at war with itself, and that war is where everything is born. From the best to the absolute worst of every single oxymoron that manifests when you play this bloody game. The remake series itself is the most expensive fanfic of all time. All it's missing is a keyhole in the sky. And these two fuckers, they're my boys, especially Goofy. Yet, despite all of that, there's an enjoyment I get out of it that probably shouldn't exist. So it's odd, really odd, that I'd enjoy this game for what it is, even as selectively as I do, but it's also impossible to do so without observing the many manifestations of the dishonesty that it was born of. Simply put, I love parts of the game, but I don't appreciate being lied to, nor the lies of omission. I remember in 2020, before I even got the game, telling a mate of mine that it ends just before you leave Midgar. He'd just got the game and he had no idea. He was pissed. But the first remake, for all its faults, is still really fun at times. However, before I praise what it did well, I have to put it out there, it is also a massive scam. Guilty pleasure. And the annoying thing, deep down, is that it could have very, very easily been avoided. Call it a reboot. Do it in one game, market the game honestly. Honesty goes a long way, but if honesty was a particularly lucrative prospect, clickbait thumbnails that lie about the contents of a video wouldn't be so popular, would they? Warmth, coziness, larger-than-life characters, brilliant soundtrack, they're all blanketed by a dishonest aberration that led to their creation. The big deal is that they claimed things wouldn't be changed very much. I don't know if it's dramatically or drastically, I'll put it in the intro. And then they changed them. Dramatically, drastically. I guess what I'm saying is, when the entire premise of the story is about how it's different from the original, that's literally as different as you could possibly make it. But I've seen the straw man arguments. I should note that I'm not a purist, and I can tell you from a less biased place that it's not that they changed things, it's that they lied and said they wouldn't. It's that simple. There are only supposed to be 3 time journeys. And it's these guys. They're the time journeys. No one else. So the question becomes, is it deliberately deceptive marketing and lying in these interviews? Or are the old guard at Square so out of touch that they don't consider these changes to be drastic? Or are they so at war with one another that they're overriding each other's plans when the others ain't looking? Personally, I think Kitase lied. Irrespective of the truth of the matter, something that's impossible to ascertain right now, possibly ever, the spectre of dishonesty forever lingers above this remake like a fart in the wind. I mean, certainly you could be a little more elaborate with it and say, it's not a remake as we've come to identify remakes. It's a reboot, a rewrite, a reimagining, fanfiction. Some may even call it a sequel. All of these descriptors have elements of truth to them. Given that Square didn't do their usual self-fellatio with the sales figures for Rebirth, the sequel, and second of the 3 remake games, apparently free, it seems that the bait and switch pissed off enough people to tell Square to shove Rebirth up their ass. We'll get to Rebirth, and I'll have an even bigger struggle admitting how that game, for all its dishonesty, sort of gave me back the joy of gaming for a month or so while playing it, while also making me want to punch my own bollocks. But this is the genesis of that remake project. You gotta start somewhere. The one that was originally supposed to release 1,000,000 years ago on a console time forgot, only to get stuck in development hell like most Square Enix projects. I mean, it's par for the fucking course at this point. Some people have pointed to the main story beats and how the remake loosely and intermittently use them as haphazard waypoints or guidestones or something, as if it'll help their cause when they're saying that it hasn't changed all that much, but you have literal plot ghosts and talk of altering destiny. And then the entire story is changed by virtue of the fact that it's literally predicated upon knowing and attempting to alter the events of the story it's supposed to be faithfully remaking. That is deception, and there are no mental gymnastics that can extricate a logical mind from this conclusive truth. This changes everything. It becomes a meta commentary. It's a fucking meta commentary on the original itself, on remake culture. So with that said, to analyze the game on its own merit and also analyze it as it pertains to the relationship it has with the original game that it spawned from and couldn't exist without, easy enough. And we can decide then if the charm and fun outweighs the ungodly amount of filler and padding. That in essence is the big thing with this video, I guess. Fun versus filler. This is a deathmatch between the fun things that this game did versus all the unnecessary bullshit that they shoved into it in order to justify the price tag by artificially increasing the game's length, because it's imprisoned entirely within Midgar, which in the original I believe was the first 5 hours or so. So this wonderful mess is the product of Yoshinori Kitase, the director and co-writer of the original on the PS1, now the producer in the remake, and Naoki Hamaguchi, who somehow got the co-director gig despite his most notable prior work being some sodding fucking mobile game called FF Mobius. I'm not even going to pretend. Whatever. And then we have the final 2, the 3 directors, Tetsuya Nomura of Kingdom Hearts Blame, and Toriyama, who directed FF13, which I love, because it's charming and special and pretty. But apparently there are also 2 writers in Najima, known for writing quite a bit for the Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts series, and Toriyama again. And right there, you can probably immediately see the issue. I used to wonder myself why so much conflicting information came out in these interviews, like Kitase saying, "We aren't changing shit," only for the changes to be the focal point of the entire story. And now I think 3 separate directors, a producer, 2 writers. What a fucking mess. Japanese game development is a fucking mess. Knowing who does what is an abstraction. It's all in the hierarchy, but it's hard to tell, and Nomura himself has stated recently in an interview, "I cannot find that things he wanted were acted against by other developers in this trilogy." So what you have is 4 separate egos, all battling it out to have their vision made manifest in what Square Enix no doubt consider the most important project in a long, long time. Probably since the original Final Fantasy VII. Too many cooks, too many ideas, too many egos. And so it's no wonder that this game feels like the video game equivalent to the town bike. Everyone's had a go. But this team also made some really keynote moments, so let's have a go ourselves. We'll take this bike for a spin. Wonder what we'll catch. The intro drives it home immediately that this thing is going to take everything that the OG was and attempt to magnify it. Midgar by day and its desert outskirts provide us with an immediate sense of the scale of the project. Kinda weird though. Feels like Advent Children. Conversely, the intro with Aerith bending the knee to the pipe is slightly altered, with her noticeably more spooked than she was in the original, and with what sounds like hints of Sephiroth's theme mixed into the music, probably whispers, how very subtle. An eerie spectre of foreshadowing for anyone who went into this game blind, I guess. This pan out though. Yeah mate, look at me, I'm fucking Midgar, innit? Yeah. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful. No one does the super rendered cutscenes like Square Enix. With the amount of money this probably cost you, you could buy a fucking Bangladeshi cricket team. And it's winning, and Wedge, and Jesse and Barrett. Avalanche! a rather rogue unit of Avalanche, the eco-terrorist group out to get Shinra, the corporation that pretty much rules the world and sucks the energy out of the planet to facilitate as much for their grand vision of some boring sounding utopia. Yeah, you get it, because the original, innit? Yeah. But now he is no longer made of Lego, and he can run without a stick up his ass. Right away, this combat feels incredible. It ain't turn-based or pure action, actually, it's just an ATB variation, like a lot of Final Fantasy games, but it's the smoothest the combat has ever felt in any FF game, ever, really. It feels diabolically addictive, and that's a really important thing. Midgar feels alive too. All these posters with lore stuff make it feel like a real, genuine place. This is important to note, you can smash blocks. Not only that, you can knock things all over the place. Random objects have physics. At least a lot of them do, and they're usually stacked up as if they know that you want to knock them down. This game gets me on a deep spiritual level. The only possible reason I can think of for them including the option to knock things around is pure mindless fun. Good Square Enix. Very good. Winning and Jesse just having a conversation here makes the whole thing feel authentic too. They feel like real people. Anyway, this is the bomb. So here's how this is going to go. I was going to do the whole, we're Cloud Strife and we've been hired as a merc to help Avalanche bomb a Shinra reactor. Avalanche are the blah 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 who fucking Shinra are bad in autistic detail, and here's an explanation on Marco energy that lasts 5 minutes, and here's the entire not today. Doing that for so many games has made me die inside, even more on the inside than I already was, and I don't want to return to the planet just yet. So while I know this ain't a pure essay, and I got to recap events to some extent as I analyze. To clarify, this video is made for people who already know the game and the lore, the original, and the remake, I suppose. Most probably know it better than I do. I'm also dispensing with the minutiae that is detailing just about every little thing, because most of the things in this game are padded filler. I'll just detail what matters in the grand scheme of the thingy. That's the mission statement. Speaking of which, this switch. Yes, this switch right here. Why do we gotta hold this thing down? Why not just press the thingy? Immersion? Metaphor? Padding and loading? Cloud's having headaches already. That's one so far, and we will be counting. Repetition is the fluoride in this game's water supply, and we shall chronicle it like a storied event each and every time. Another early change is that we're being watched by President Shinra and his number 2, Heidegger, and I guess they can hear Barrett's speech to Cloud about the importance of Marco energy and saving the planet and all that, so they probably heard this too.
While you sleep, while you eat, while you shit, it's here sucking up Marco. You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain? I know you can!
You really hear that?
Damn straight I do!
Get help.
There are some places a sword just can't reach.
Yeah.
But Barrett's combat, man, it immediately provides a lovely counterbalance to Cloud's, complete with the requisite hard-to-reach enemies that give you ample opportunity to blow shit up and enjoy doing it. It's fun to shoot things. And this Marco water looks insanely cool. Oh, headache and a black feather. That counts as headache 2. That's 2 so far. I didn't count the black feathers, but I counted a lot of the headaches. The battle with the Scorpion is quite fun, and has a few set pieces like taking cover, really making the most of the action-related aspect of the ATB system. And that's a theme that will run through the whole game, really. The battle areas tend to feel grand and spacious enough to facilitate enough time to plan your actions, to some extent anyway, but also compressed enough that you can't just run away forever. On the way out, I'm looking at the numbers and I realize how gorgeous the UI is. Nice user interface, things like the HUD, which is the heads-up display, on-screen elements essentially, and they look really pretty and really blue, and it makes me feel at ease as we run through enemies on our way to bomb shit. Interesting twist here, the bomb wasn't big enough, so Shinra themselves finished the job. And that's literally chapter 1. Short, well-paced, to the point, but also padded, in a way that only really makes sense if you played the OG, which you likely have. There's little to say about it because it does everything it needs to. Introduces some of the main players, gives you some fan service, and acclimates you to the combat and the flow of the game going forward. I can't write like a 2-hour essay on it, it's not Nier Automata. Something about the atmosphere and remake Midgar though. It's really addictive, it's evil and dreary and oppressive, but also kind of warm, just like the OG was. But now you can look up at the gigantic reactor and have the sense of scale hit you as it haunts you from above like a ghost that forgot to die. It's incredible, and this city really is a main character in this game. They really communicated its sheer presence for such a short chapter. As chapter 2 rears its head, we immediately bear witness to the slowing downing of the game, and this will persist throughout the game as well. I thought about this for a while. The best excuse for these sections where you have to crawl and shimmy or slide through shit is that it's loading an area. But this area ain't that large, and surely you'd only need one, right? Obfuscation, maybe? It's done in the way that only really brings more attention to it. And if it really is padding after all, then the most polite possible thing I could say would be, what the fuck were they thinking? I like this scene where Barrett comforts a group when they see the scale of the destruction they caused, or they think they caused. The principle's the same though. The fact that they think they've caused a fair bit more destruction than they actually meant to is kind of irrelevant considering that they ain't exactly walking the easy path in life. The game's insistence on showcasing these guys wrestling with their conscience is really good storytelling, and Barrett's true nature underneath the hard man exterior has a chance to shine in this scene. Walking through the burning ruins of the sector is really cinematic, and it's really great until...
What? Flanders! What is it?
Game's out there! Made you look.
They're just words, Nettie. Words can't hurt you. Ow!
Oh, it's egregious. Not just the slow walking, but the fact that Sephi is like here already. One of the most mysterious dudes in the early game of the original, and they're playing the Sephiroth card in Chapter 2, less than an hour in. His speech is slow and boring and pretentious and predictable, and he's basically just saying, "Run away, Cloud, given to the hatred." It's crap. It's just Homer trolling Flanders at the football game. It's not the only reason I mention Flanders when it comes to Sephi as well, but, you know, I'll leave that to the interpretation of the audience. Hey, I know that girl. Flowers, get your flowers. Oh, second Sephi sighting. And headache free. Headache free already. It's Aerith, super early too, like she was waiting for us. Something this entire game permeates with is Aerith's clairvoyant aura. She gives us a flower and then some scrotum monsters attack us. Since this is a spoiler video, I guess this is the first instance of them saying, wait, haven't you played the original on the PlayStation 1? This didn't fucking happen. Go home and think about what you've done. I am a scrotum. And that's it. And that's what the plot scrotums are. Well, they're the whispers, technically, and it's worth mentioning that Cloud only notices them after Aerith touches him. Back with the gang on the train, and look who it is.
We will not submit to intimidation or violence, but work together for peace and prosperity. That is how civilized people change the world.
That's right.
Shut up. To be honest, I don't blame him for acting like scared little puppies. Look at him, it's like, is this physique achievable, Natty? Chicken and broccoli, bro, chicken and broccoli. Oh, and that's chapter 2 done. Very short, they all are. Mainly, like there's 18 of them, so they have to be. Hello again, plot scrotums. I forgot about this. Cloud gives Tifa the flower that Aerith gave him. I mean, that's either very thoughtful or very mean. I guess it doesn't matter since Tifa's better than Aerith anyway. This shot of the plate early on really hammers home the sheer verticality of Midgar, once again communicating its presence to the player in a way that's really cohesive and easy to understand. And it reminds me that looking up in a game is something we really ought to do more. It's something I try to do more, so we can appreciate it. But it really gets across the scale of Midgar as a setting. It feels grand and cavernous now, just absolutely huge, and in a way that only this kind of approach could make a reality of, at least to this degree. How good the graphics in this game are will change every couple of seconds depending on what it is exactly you're looking at any given moment. Character faces, exceptional. Doors, depends. Combat effects, juicy. Upper plate, two-dimensional, same with the backgrounds. Some of them anyway. Yeah, a lot of the background is 2D. Not sure how it is I can tell, it's just something the human eye can reasonably discern quite easily, it would seem. It's odd, but I think it's just indicative of like a COVID-era project, even if it was developed for a long time before its eventual release in 2020. The graphics here work in polar opposites, but graphics are nothing without the art direction of creative people, and in typical modern Final Fantasy fashion, hyperrealism is the direction they go in here. In terms of the wider world around us, Midgar is mainly depressingly slum-like, but you know, it's mainly a slum that we spend our time in, so any colour and vibrancy will have to be injected via the combat, and it very much is on account of the magic spells and the intuitive and stylistic on-screen elements. And for me, I think that's what kept the game from being bland and forgetful as it pertains to the artistic decisions, because the characters may be more colourful and out there than the environment at times, but it's a very transient thing. So for the most part, there's a stylized cohesion within all of the elements that make up the game's visual content. As a result though, you won't get a great deal of variation with regards to the game's locations, at least in the slums. Aerith's place is different, and it's so impactful that it was actually the turning point in helping me to appreciate the setting. And Shinra HQ later will also do something similar with a very startling shift in the aesthetics and the vibe. All in all, it is a somewhat diverse world insofar as the locational archetypes, but it's an ephemeral thing to actually notice as much, meaning there's more of an impact when you actually do ascend from the slums and up into the wider world around you. There's something quietly beautiful about the place though, especially at night in the residential district during the mission with Jesse, Winning and Wedge, Sector 7 in the evening with the plate standing imposingly in the background making us feel small. They work well, and that's in complete contrast to the more lively locations like Wall Market and Shinra. So I guess the general vibe is that the atmosphere of Midgar didn't just translate well from the original, but gained a life of its own during the reimagination process. It's a shame you can't travel between places at your own discretion more, but that's how linearity works, I guess. There's no real reason to. Midgar's a unique location in that it feels alive in a really quiet and unassuming way. There's something peaceful about it, but something sinister behind it too. So it's another Sephiroth scene. The fact it's not really him, or might not be him, is irrelevant. This is the third time we've seen him already. I'm sick of that face, I'm sick of that voice, it's overkill. Tifa wants us to help with things around town. This means side quests. Chapter 3 is the get to know the game chapter, and we're introduced to side quests, more nuances in combat as well, and new characters, reimagined characters, and a lot of cats. It's essentially the juncture upon which you'll realise remarkably quickly whether or not you're going to like this game, love it, or hate it, because it most certainly is a microcosm for the entire experience that is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Tifa shows us around the reimagined Sector 7, and I will say it feels great. It's vibrant and it's alive. This is the game's way of introducing us to the more prominent side characters via side quests, but first we help out Winning and Wedge with a simple monster extermination thingy. As side quests go, not too bad. The characters are the fun part about it, and the game makes good use of its map, segmenting areas nicely so it doesn't feel too cramped. You can also fast travel back to the quest giver the moment you're done with a quest. Insofar as content is concerned, they range from Lost Cat, because it's a JRPG, to monster slaying and fetch quests, because it's a JRPG. Nothing groundbreaking, but side quests never really have been that. They provide an insight into a unique world and a unique set of people, and I think that's enough to justify its existence. The town's full of fun characters, and it's fun getting to know them. On the topic of whether or not side quests are worth it, I feel that's a more metaphysical question than I'd like to handle, because the Nier Automata essay already scattered the remains of my sanity to the unerring sands of time, and so with those sands being so deep, the simple answer is weapons, money, accessories, materia, they're nice, and you get them all from side quests. However, you could technically avoid them all. At least I think you could. I would not recommend doing this, however. I'd recommend doing the ones in Chapter 3 at least, and getting a feel for them. Not just for the tangible rewards, but for the vibes. Seeing if you're kind of in the mood for them going forward. Is this headache 3 or 4? 4, whatever. This is Chadley. Shinra operative hates Shinra, actively working against him, openly admits it. He's endearingly autistic, so we're going to help him with his scientific research by equipping the assess materia and forgetting to gather battle intel for him so he can do his materia research. He's more useful in Rebirth, but he's also more annoying in Rebirth. Maybe he was the pinball machine in the original. This is Johnny. He is not endearing, he's just annoying. Okay, he gets endearing as it goes on, but mainly in the next game. Tifa's audition for Best Girl begins. Minigames now, and darts is a thing, and I actually managed to check out on a single too. Yes, in JRPGs, darts is easy, because a 25 counts as a bullseye for some reason, and you can check out on a single. Later on we have the box smashing minigame, and in episode Yuffie we have Fort Condor. There are some others, but it's kind of barren. They emphasize story and combat, I guess, no matter. In the sequel, that desire for stupid minigames will be compensated for, and then some. Tifa has misgivings for the whole eco-terrorism thing, and it's something we didn't really see much in a profound way in the original. And I've been avoiding saying it, but since I will rip this game a new one, and I've already stated that my issue with it is its dishonesty in calling itself not a reboot but a remake, I do admit that I prefer the character writing more in the remake series, by quite a bit actually. They feel much more human. It's not just the voices or the 3D faces or the expressions either. Barrett's more endearing, it doesn't behave like a total roided up piece of shit most of the time. Tifa doesn't randomly turn into a shit poster. It's funny as shit, hearing her call Barrett a tard, but it just doesn't fit her character. And even Jesse, Winning and Wedge are more humanized. And of course Cloud is trying his best to pretend he doesn't like anyone, even though deep down he's the lord of the nerds. Why else do you think Chadley loves him so much? Little character moments like this are likely a remarkably large part of why the game stuck with me in ways that aren't all negative. Anyway, Barrett finally pays us and kicks us out.
Sorry, I tried. We talked it over, but in the end...
Some dudes want Barrett's location, and Cloud lures them to a remote part of the town and wrecks them. Whether he would have really sold Barrett out for the 300 gil is unknown, but I like to think he wouldn't have, because it's nicer.
Welcome home, honey. Took your sweet time.
Trad waifu. Jessie's so fun, man. And a thirsty lady. A thirst that cannot be quenched, one might say. She needs our help on a mission.
Like I give a shit.
We've got to travel topside, but the trains ain't running, so we're going to bike it with the crew. Bike friends. The bike minigame. Is it a minigame? I guess. It's a nice panacea to all the combat so far, and it keeps things varied. Controls are smooth, and you can pretend it's a Road Rash remake. This is Roche, a brand new character, I think. He's great, man. The segment lasts a good while, but the idea is attack, evade, and block the dudes, and then defeat Roche, the boss. Jessie's response is one of 3, I believe, depending on how well you do during this section, and after this lukewarm reaction, I believe I've now received every single Jessie response, except the one where she kisses you for doing great. It's harder than it looks. I love this area, it's so quiet. We meet Jessie's mum and her talkative dad, we grab his ID card and it's off to the base. The combat here is a good test of what you've learned so far, since they throw so many enemies at you all at once. It's also a chance to use our Clive summon materia. We'll talk about that during the combat section. Roche, hi again, he's our bike friend now. Another bike friend. Honestly, he's a great addition to the series. He wants another battle because he's a nut job, so we fight him because he's our nut job, and after defeating him, for now, he helps us on his way out.
I'll see you on the road, my friend.
Best friend.
Are we seriously doing this here? That's... wow.
You guys are the worst.
Your ass is fine. Maybe singed, but the only casualty is your underwear. This is like a bruise or a mild burn at worst.
Now that was a gunshot.
Is that a smile I spy?
It's not safe here. We should go.
Copy that.
These moments are peppered in throughout the entire remake series. This is the charm I mentioned. Cheesy, silly, stupid moments of coziness and shit. It's like the video game equivalent of fish and chips. Just check this one scene, for instance.
Be proud.
Yeah? Yeah!
Feels like we're flying high these days.
Now, more than ever.
He's a keeper, all right.
Yeah! Together, we can take on the world!
My fucking Kino slop.
Mind coming over tomorrow night? My roommates should all be out for a while.
Are you seriously that desperate? Just let go already. No promises, but I'll think it over.
Really? You will? I'd make a mean pizza, I'll have you know. Marsh, louche, black millie, red shelly. I use only the best ingredients. Sound good?
Never heard of any of that stuff.
Oh, you are so adorable, you know that? You just leave everything to me. It'll be great. Nighty-night. Psych.
My fucking trad waifu. Tifa's still better though. Jessie only likes us when we ride our bike well. Tifa loves us even when we're being a fucking idiot. This whole chapter is brilliant and it should not exist, despite serving partially to pad the game to justify the price tag for a game that should have cut the filler and had us at the Chocobo Ranch by now. It feels as though the writers genuinely did enjoy deepening the characters of Jessie, Winning, and Wedge, and that salves my conscience a tiny bit. Jessie's backstory as an aspiring actress will bear fruit in the sequel. Man, this chapter had intrigue, charming cozy moments, camaraderie, character development, and excitement, and the crescendo at the end was perfect. It's my favourite chapter, by far, and it had barely anything to do with the main story. It shouldn't be in the game, and it's my favourite. You see what I mean now about all these mixed emotions? We really do develop a connection with Jesse as a character, but also Winning and Wedge. And Cloud opens up more too. These guys are great. Slop never tasted so good. Or so bad. The plot scrotums are out in force, and after a long fight they injure Jesse and then go away. Knowing by the end that they exist simply to keep events as close to the original as possible, they actually represent a large majority of the fans, I'd be willing to bet, with Cloud and the gang actually being an analogue for the writing team. It's a twisted analogue, but Cloud's back in.
So, do you still support those terrorists? Avalanche is a blight on Midgar. Their bomb threat has thrown our offices into chaos, let alone the reactor itself. It's total insanity! But we won't lose heart. No! Everyone at Shinra agrees. The reactor will stay online.
Is that right?
What? You got a problem with that?
Do I have a problem with that? Oh, you can bet.
He doesn't.
Dun, 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 dun.
That is shameless. I'm all for it. After the train gets crashed by Shinra drones, Shinra middle manager, who doesn't even have a proper name, and he's getting character development. He's putting his feelings aside to help the civvies, to keep him safe. I'm not memeing it up when I say that this guy is awesome and I really like his character. He really is, and it's only going to get better in the sequel. Shinra middle manager is the fucking best. He's such a good character, man. And that's the fun stuff over. This section is a grouping of chapters, 5 through 7 for reasons that will become obvious momentarily. My hope was that this would be the video where I cut loose and had to summarize less, with more to analyze. And I guess you got to seek out the positives in life, because the fact is that this 3-chapter section is essentially one giant dungeon. This is where the faults and the flaws, the cracks and crevices of the more insidious elements of the game's rocky development all come to the surface and flood the place. The only thing that keeps it tolerable, like even remotely bearable, is the banter between Cloud, Barrett and Tifa, and watching them all become closer as a group, despite Cloud trying to keep his guard up emotionally and Barrett's hesitance to trust him initially. There are so many other ways that this could have been done, so many more creative avenues that they could have travelled, but instead they chose the easiest, most uninspired road to travel in order to artificially lengthen this game. With all the puzzles, switches, levers and everything else, it's so transparent and low effort that that's exactly what these chapters are. And so I can't reasonably justify summoning the effort required to detail them in full, nor the ways in which they could have been improved, because I played the most padded JRPG series of all time. And it ain't this, but god damn, does it pull off the impression really fucking well. This is the low point of the game. I'd say it could have been just one chapter, but even that seems too much. God, it's making me sad just thinking about it. When I talk about mixed emotions, chapter 4 with the Avalanche gang best represents the good, and 5 through 7 represent the worst. The highs and lows of this game are so strikingly disparate in nature that it's like I'm playing 2 separate games. 4 people battling for control of the direction of a game, and an edict from above to make sure that it's long enough to justify its price tag so they can stretch it out to 3 games at least. And this is how that manifests. It's not fun, it's anti-fun, and it's inexcusable. And I'd say what the fuck were they thinking, but the answer is quantified in yen, dollars, pounds and euros. They were thinking of the money. The Golden Goose was going to make them 3 times as much, but with 3 times less content. That was their idea. Turns out that wasn't quite the case. Either way, it's all in the modern Square Enix genetics. I mentioned them before, unless I put this video before the Final Fantasy 15 one. There's an arrogance to them, I think. They think they're too big to fail, but sinking sales are not telling a story commensurate with that confidence. After Rebuff sales being a disaster, the PC port was just announced as I'm me saying this. It's not looking good for Part 3, and I have a distinct feeling that if by some miracle I'm still alive to see it, given how clumsy I am, I'll be looking back with sadness and also joy at what could have been if you just combined the best of all 3 and cut out the padding and the filler. Just a feeling.
You chickening out?
Hell no! I'm just worried that your bony ass is gonna get blown off the side and shit.
Enough! We gotta keep moving. By the light of these magnificent lamps, we shall lead our brothers and sisters of the Undercity to a brighter future.
Say what?
So to summarize, Chapter 5 is navigating the subway, Chapter 6 is us turning off the sun lamps in order to advance while also doing multiple fights and lever puzzles and walking slowly across beams, and in Chapter 7 we've got to find keycards to mess with the Airbusters loadout, which will affect how it behaves in battle when we fight it later. Shinra lures us in and broadcasts us to the whole of Midgar, as if to say, hey, these guys are the terrorists, they're the bad guys. We also get headaches 5 and 6. We also defeat the Airbuster, and then Cloud falls into the abyss. Headache 7. And it's Cloud's vision of Aerith's Materia dropping, which is after she's killed in the original. At least that's the implication, I think. The sledgehammer of subtlety strikes again. Honestly, it's egregious. It feels like an insult, but it's Aerith's chapter, so that means fun as well. I like to think of this as Act 2 of 3 in this game. If Act 1 is the Sector 7 stuff with the Avalanche gang, Act 2 is the Aerith stuff in Sector 5 and Wall Market, and the final act, I guess, is when we go to Shinra HQ to rescue Aerith. So if you weren't already wondering if this might not be the faithful remake you were hoping for, then I imagine the Aerith scene wasn't enough to fool you. I mean, it's very similar, but considering Cloud literally gets carried away by plot scrotums before he can even go against the original canon, it's... yeah. Church and the Flowers look incredible though. They always do. And Aerith and Cloud's dynamic has a lot of chemistry. After about 1 or 2 hours, tens of battles, and however many side quests you're in the mood for, the only story developments are that we were helping Aerith home while the Turks chased her, and then leaving only to have Aerith follow us to travel to Wall Market with us because we got to go save Tifa from Don Corneo. This could have been done in minutes, instead it takes hours because that's the design philosophy for this game, just pad it out. We end with Headache 9. Headache 8 was very fun, but I forgot to clip it. Oh, we get a tear this time as well. My theory is that Cloud probably remembers the original Aerith dying, and if so, it's some of the worst writing I've ever seen with how on the nose it is. Anyway, chapter 9 is a little more fun. In fact, it's the duality of the remake in one single chapter. Reason being is we start with a giant dungeon with stupid puzzles and the most blatant example of padding I've ever seen in the game that isn't made by Falcom. But once we're out, we get one of the most wild sections in the game. Chapter 9 goes from cosplaying a Trails game to cosplaying a Yakuza game in about an hour. The song playing is called High Five, another of the nicer elements of the remake being the expanded soundtrack. I do prefer the original versions of the songs they remade, which to no one's surprise puts an orchestral spin on the old OST. What else are they going to do? But the new tracks are really nice too. Midnight Rendezvous, Hollow Skies, Shinra HQ, I believe it's called All Quiet of the Gates, and High Five, chief among them. As for the dungeon, it at least included the high five. You gotta hold down the button and feel Cloud's anguish as you do it. But then you feel his joy and elation as he finally performs a high five. That's immersion. Wall Market looks incredible, feels incredible. Corneo's 3 lackeys add a lot to the experience. Madam M is funny and weirdly likable. Chocobo Sam is boring and annoying. And Andrea is funny. And there's a lot to do in this place. As it pertains to the story content of any particular import, we get Headache 10. I lost the footage. And we go for the luxury massage with Madam M. We did the tourney, we got the shittiest dresses, we did the dance very poorly, and got chosen by Don Corneo to be Midgar's next top hooker. We then get sent down a trap floor into the sewers because one of the most fun parts of the game has to, of course, be followed up by a soulless fucking sewer dungeon with levers and puzzles galore. But hey, since we won the tournament, let's talk combat. You know, as someone who really loves 13's battle system, it's nice to see it praised so highly by people who don't realize that that's what they're doing when they praise FF7 Remake. 13 really did serve as the basis and the foundation of how fun combat would be going forward for much of the series. 15 sort of deviated from this, with an emphasis on flashiness over a tactical approach and player agency. But this game really brings that ethos back into focus with a system that's not quite fully action or turn-based, but hits both markers really well in an addictive way. Weird to note, but the only thing I can measure addictiveness for as a positive for anything is combat in games. You want it to be addictive because you're going to be doing it over and over again for the duration of the game, and you also want it to be perpetually existing in a state of evolution and progression, which this one does too. When you save up some special moves for each character and then cycle through each of them in a smooth sequence, finishing off the enemy with the last one, that's the big business, man. That's the big business right there. So you have an ATB system that's neither fully action or turn-based, and that's fine because addictiveness is the main ingredient. There's an impact to every single move, and you can see it in the flashy colors, you can hear it in the excellent sound effects, and with those two together, you can feel it too. And it's that kind of impactfulness that makes you want to engage in these systems more as a player, and take it to the tougher enemies you might not necessarily need to, as well as doing any grinding you might want to do. Is grinding necessary? No. I've done 2 playthroughs of this game. The first playthrough I did a lot of side quests and I did a lot of leveling, and this one I just sort of did what I wanted to. This playthrough was about 10 hours less and I ended both on level 34. Simple enough, you have an ATB gauge that charges as you attack normally, and when you charge up a gauge you get a special attack. You can also stagger enemies, and so combining the two always works well. Timing is important, and the commands can be pinned to the shortcut tab like spells, so you don't have to access the command menu. But when you do access the command menu, it slows things down to a crawl. This is cool because stopping time entirely would kill the flow, and this looks both legitimately cool and also slows things down for more than enough time to give you the time to decide your next move. Evading and guarding don't need explaining. Spells do spell things, limit breaks wreck shit, and that's the basics. Well, not counting summon materia, which is not required, but it certainly looks cool and it's pretty useful. My favourite is the Chocobo and the Moogle. It's called the Chocomog materia. They're just really fun and they make me feel happy. So I always put that one on Cloud, no matter what better ones there are. Cloud always gets the Chocomog materia. I think it's because his hair looks like a chocobo. We'll get onto that in Rebirth, turns out the game agrees with me. Cloud's special combat ability involves switching to Punisher mode, which slows your movement down, but does a fair bit more damage, so it's a trade-off. Barret incorporates a second charge gauge with the overdrive move, which you can help charge quicker by pressing it and combining it with his focused shot or whatever power attack you want to do, and you're going to wreck fuckers that way. He also has a defensive buff because he's a big dude. Also, if he has 2 ATB gauges full, whatever attack command you give him will use both of them. I assume it's a more powerful variant of the move, but I haven't actually counted the numbers, so let's just assume, shall we? Tifa is the powerhouse, which is very funny, but it's a Final Fantasy game and she ain't some cunty girl boss, but rather a sweet biddy, so I don't mind. You can hold down the attack button to hit enemies, much harder actually with a power attack, and use her unbridled strength move. That is really hard to say. That's the best I'm going to do, otherwise I'm stuck on this for 5 minutes. The uppercut becomes a better, cooler uppercut with a different name depending on whether it's at level 1, 2 or 3. Dive kick is really fun to use too, immediately after an uppercut while you're still in the air. So if you combine the two, not only does it look cool, it's really effective as well. The combat in this game is just generally really fun and addictive, and Tifa's combat, I think, personifies this better than any other because it's impactful and it's fast and it's flashy. It's perfect. That's why I just, whenever I can, I'll just use Tifa instead. Despite Red being in the game at one point, Aerith is the final playable character. She's a mage, but it's not like the original where you could get a weapon early on that makes her the best physical attacker for a while. Just to cheese it, you've actually got to engage with her systems. She's got a powered up magic attack that she can unleash by holding the button down. And she can also deploy a ward that makes magic attacks cast twice if you're inside the thing. So don't be an idiot like me and cast it in the center of the thing. You maybe go behind some cover first. And Soul Drain absorbs just 2 MP each time, but that shit adds up, so you can wreck enemies with magic a little longer. It's a clever trade-off with MP and ATB, but I do wish Soul Drain restored a lot more MP than it does. And the coolest thing is that you can switch between party members seamlessly at any point that they're in battle, as well as ordering others to do certain things while retaining control of whomever you were using at the time. It's flexible, it's dynamic, has a nice bit of depth, but it's simple by virtue of being so intuitive and easy to use and fun. You know, smooth with all the animations being lovely to look at while also not taking up too much time. With the exception of your party members' innate movesets like Cloud's Braver attack, for example, subsequent special moves are exclusive to weapons to start with, but then unlocked for permanent use once you've performed a specific action enough times. 2 examples of a specific action would be staggering or finishing off an enemy. Really simple stuff for the most part. It's a good incentive to use every weapon that you find, as opposed to just saying, you know, out with the old, in with the new. They also take different amounts of materia, usually. Speaking of which, materia also levels up, and it encourages using many different types, even if you don't have any use for it yet. Just sticking it in there will passively level it, so there's no reason not to. Even an empty materia slot is only really permissible if you don't have anything to put in there. That's a good way of looking at it, I think. It's like the original in that you level what you use. Weapon upgrading and additional materia slots come via SB and the pseudo Crystarium, as I like to call it. Maybe like a baby Crystarium. It's like Final Fantasy XIII's Crystarium, but with a greater degree of freedom. But because of that, it doesn't sound quite so cool anymore. It's not as fleshed out because it's a per weapon basis, and you know, without that sound effect, it just ain't the same. But shit happens. You can increase your stats here, and every single weapon has its own corresponding skill tree, alongside a few gimmick weapons. I dare say though that the best part of all of this is that it's as deep as you want it to be. You could ignore it entirely and just rely on simple strategies and just cheese it, or you could try the harder difficulties and really dive into it, mastering every weapon in order to get all the skills and have a great variety of things you can do, and then put your favourites on a shortcut list. But I think the kind of person to play JRPGs is probably about 75% likely to be the kind of person who 100%'s a game anyway. But for me, the fun is in the choice. It's a great combat system. It's really, really fun. Shit sewer dungeon. Stupid pump minigame that's badly explained and adds nothing to the experience. It's all just padding, man. It's padding. This chapter sucks, but it does establish Tifa and Aerith's chemistry, which is taken up a notch in the sequel. Except for that, this chapter is as insidious as any other filler chapter, and it should be taken out back and shot in the fucking head. Alongside chapter 11, the plot graveyard, the train the plot graveyard. Well, it's a plot graveyard. This one adds a little mini arc about ghosts and how Aerith is clairvoyant or whatever, which we already basically know. And once again, if you think I'm glossing over much of this game, it's because it shouldn't exist. In the Rebirth video, I fear I will go so in depth into it that it becomes my longest video yet. But for now, no, it doesn't deserve it. These chapters reek of the foul fucking stench of Square Enix's perpetual mismanagement and deception. And it's in remembering these moments that I admittedly smiled when I saw that Rebirth sold like crap. I did, I had a smile and a laugh. And that's despite it being really soulful, because I enjoyed that a lot more than this. I have a conflicted soul in it, you know, I'm a deep guy. No. Either way, this chapter is wonderfully atmospheric, but like the past few chapters, it's riddled with puzzles, slow walking, slow running, walking along beams, shimmying, crawling, and every other blight you can imagine. All we do is go through the train graveyard to return to Sector 7 and get a little ghost side story that has no relevance outside of the chapter. It sucks ass, man. It sucks ass. Yeah, that's it, game. Make me walk fucking less than 1 mile an hour. Thanks. Another one of these. Whoa, one of these too. Oh no. He said ghost midget.
Oh, I am Ghost Jen. Senpai, save me.
Yeah, there's even more filler after this.
Bro, that scared me. Game of the year.
Game of the year, Donald. Donald, it's not enough. I need pussy, Donald.
We're gonna have to make our way round to the other side. Wow.
Shinra are going to drop the plate on Sector 7, so Avalanche have launched an attack. Cloud heads up, and throughout this whole thing, the plot scrotums are trying to obstruct us from our goal. They truly are the manifestations of Square Enix's selective incompetence. During this sequence, we lose both Winning and Jesse, and both deaths hit a lot harder than the OG. In the OG, we barely knew them, and now they're given death scenes that are commensurate with the amount of time they've had on the screen. They're given the gravity they deserve, and they are really likable, so this hurts down. Chapter 4 hurts too, in hindsight. The writers changed a hell of a lot, but they still killed these two. And you can see the plot of scrotums hanging around Jesse. They were obviously a part of that. Jesse hurts especially, but the scene's so brilliantly done that I can't really begrudge it. Aerith finds Marlene, and after hugging the midget has some sort of vision. The whole Aerith clairvoyance thing has never been so unsubtle, but at this point, it's almost certain that she's an analog for the audience and that she knows the alternate timeline of the original game. Or rather that this is an alternate timeline, but therein lies one of the biggest issues with the game. You know, without knowledge of the original, most of the fan service about it will fall flat. And things like Kate Sith appearing after the plate falls, and anyone who does get it is probably really angry by now or performing cognitive dissonance or pretending they just haven't realized that Square Enix betrayed them with their "we're not drastically changing the storyline." It's all really on the nose, like they're saying, get it? It's like they're just saying that to us. Like we're gonna, yeah mate, you know stuff. Like I said, I ain't no purist, it's all about the one big lie. Aerith is captured, and after a battle with Reno and Rude presses the button and the Turks successfully drop the plate onto Sector 7, no doubt killing countless people below. And I'll talk in the sequel about how they just brush this off and treat them like likable Team Rocket style villains, which they're admittedly good at, which is why I'm sad that they're the ones who dropped the plate, and how difficult it is to reconcile those things until you just stop giving a shit about the specifics and the ethics, and that's the joy of the sequel. But hey, that's the key to enjoying the remake series to begin with. Disengage with ethics and common sense and you'll have a great time. I certainly did.
And so, to Reeve, I retorted, but has the stock fallen as fast as the Sector 7 plate did upon our enemies?
I love this scene with Barrett realizing he's lost everything. Trad waifu, Winning, Wedge, possibly Marlene. Tifa can't keep it together very well either. It's really sad, but it's the ramifications of the lives that they chose, and one of the most human moments in the whole sub-series. It's something I'm not afraid to say that the original barely took into consideration. If the writers kept their interpretation of expanding the story, as they call it, to stuff like this, and not rewriting it to their own multiverse fanfiction bullshit, then they probably could have kept people happy for the most part. They deserve the shit they get, but moments like this feel like something out of 13, which, despite the shit it gets from people who probably didn't get past the first boss because they think the combat was easy, because, well, there you go. Character dynamics, they are at the forefront of the game's narrative, and that's where the charm and the great writing was predominantly located. Also, Headache 11. This Sephiroth genuinely just sucks ass. He shows up repeatedly as an apparition or something, says something pseudo-cryptic, then leaves. If he wasn't interesting the first time, he won't be 1,000 appearances later. We get a QRD on Aerith being an ancient, which most players likely already knew, and resolve to save her. And I suppose this is the start of what I personally consider the third arc, or act, of the game. The journey to get back Aerith and get back at Shinra. Despite all of this game's flaws, the motivations of the characters are far from a question mark, and we know what we're doing, and more importantly, why we're doing it. Now this would be a good chapter to keep short, but in typical FF7 Remake fashion, a very delicate section is followed up by a filler dungeon. Seeing the remains of 7th Heaven sucks, but Wedge is alive, for now. Anyway, here, have another 1 hour dungeon. This, consequently, is where I genuinely considered just dropping it. Absent the charm, I would have done so. In this dungeon, you control Barret though, shooting walls to make openings, and my god, this is bad. I'm going super bullet point mode here. It's probably one of the less annoying dungeons too, it's just we've had so many at this point that it's like, oh my god, just stop. I want this video concise so I can preemptively apologise to my own sanity for the possible length of my video on the sequel. Balls. The premise of chapter 14 is finding a way up to see Shinra HQ, to go infiltrate the place, but the side content's actually pretty good here. The best is the Betty quest where you collect music to cheer people up, but the main story content is uninspiring, to put it generously. Leslie the Cap guy helps us through, yes, again, it's the underground waterways, upon which we face loads of enemies, defeat a boss, learn a bit about Les, Don Corneo gets away, and then we're good to finally commence with the big finale. If these sections were filled with more meaningful and enjoyable material, well, it'd be a little less shit, but padding undisguised is a death sentence for fun. This game was never getting out of Midgar, but it still could have been better than this. You know, for a nothing chapter, in terms of plot developments in which we literally just scale the plate to get to Shinra HQ, they at least don't try to pretend that there's more to it. I like this chapter, it's a very honest chapter. I think it's the sheer scale of the level as well, the verticality of it, the surprisingly nice looking 2D backgrounds, which is, you know, offset by the incredible art direction. Feels like Final Fantasy 13, basically, like we're doing something grand and incredible. This chapter's very fun. The infiltration, and then this beautiful music that plays exclusively in the Shinra lobby. It's been in my sleep music playlist for about a year now. The whole chapter feels fleshed out in a way that, for once, justifies its existence, though. The grand scale of Shinra's oppression and opulence is on full display at every conceivable angle. It is a shining monument to that out-of-touch corporate greed that reminds me more of Square Enix by the fucking day, Jesus Christ. The design of the place is beautiful too, because corporate greed sure does hire some good architects, so the place feels cozy, at least in that eerie, awful way. I can even stomach the little padded sections, actually. The reason is, this place is so fun to do padding in. The rest are mainly just passionless, colourless, rocky underground sections or waterways. We go chandelier hopping, we take the stairs for some funny dialogue, the offices are full of people now. We go on a wild goose chase looking for the mayor's man. We meet him to find out he's a bit loopy and he's Avalanche's man on the inside. We meet some cute little turrets.
Marco, explosive. Mayor, explosive. Marco, explosive. Mayor, very bad.
And the whole chapter feels like a fun journey from beginning to end. It's also so far removed from what we've been used to down in the slums, you know, so that disparity freshens things up for the big ending. Another thing that this game does that the original can't touch is how fucking evil Shinra is, via how evil their main players are, namely fucking Hojo. He's vile. I think it's because you can see his facial expressions he's so contorted and awful, you know? And then you have Scarlet and Heidegger and the rest of them. Except Reeve. He ain't squeaky clean, but Hojo's so shitty that even these guys at one point are like, ugh. Scarlet straight up says that she has no problem with torture, but is apparently disgusted by Hojo's idea to have Aerith reproduce, with all that entails. But yeah, I like Reeve. I'm surprised they haven't disposed of him yet. These people are the scum of the earth, pure psychopaths. Except Reeve. That guy's a curious cat. Yeah. Eventually, we catch up with Hojo, and the Whispers literally carry him away. I like his reaction, he's like, oh goodness, what is this phenomenon? Oh! It's like, bro, you're being carried away, you should be more scared. He's a weirdo. So, are the Whispers omnipotent or omniscient? But they don't seem omnipotent, because sometimes we can like push past them. Wait, if that's the case and they are omnipotent, are they to blame for the padding? Fucking plot scrubs. Red 13, he seems hostile, but then Aerith touches him like Jacob from Lost, and he mellows out and he's like, yeah. He's very philosophical and he has a wise, weathered voice. Perfect for a fluffy thing. Holy shit, a headache. Must be the first one of the game. Oh wow, an interactive slow walking headache. They're really playing their cards here. Look, at this point, the headache's Sephiroth Cloud being out of it, it's so fucking overplayed. It has reached critical mass of retardation. It is the height of comedy. It is repetition, and repetition is the death of creativity. While all stories are admittedly repetitive to a degree, this one makes no effort whatsoever to obscure that fact with creativity. More of it. Instead, they just do more of the thing that has caused it. Oh, Jesus Christ. They just force feed this into the player for the duration. There are no words for how bad this particular bit of writing is. Well, I guess it was a fun chapter overall. There are some things that don't need to be said, but in the interest of posterity, I shall. Chapter 17, the penultimate chapter, contains a big-ass dungeon with multiple levels. From the start to the finish, this game is padded to hell and back. It's actually impressive how committed these guys were to making sure that they squeezed every single ounce of content, every single second that they possibly could from something that only should have been 5 to 10 hours, and then give way to what we eventually got in Rebirth. And if you extracted all the padding and filler from Rebirth even, and then added a third one on, you probably would have had a game the length of maybe a Witcher 3 and one of the greatest games of all time, provided they actually marketed it honestly and called it a reboot. Now that's the good ending. This, however, is reality, and in reality, selling a 10-hour game for full price would kill you in the stock market, and so here we are. That said, the gang is all here now, and Barrett and Red's dynamic is great, and of course more Sephi, with a headache to complement it. President Shinra is hanging out outside, and seeing him beg for his life is very funny. In the OG, we find the Prez dead in his chair, I believe, if I'm remembering that right, but Sephi just kills him right in front of us, because he has a little scene with Barrett. Not a big change. The big change comes in the form of what happens after, because perhaps in a nod to the original plan for the OG script, wherein Barrett is the one to die, and not Aerith, at least that's what I read, Barrett is killed by Sephi here, but not really, as the Whispers literally bring him back to life with magical scrotum powers. So we have established now, in doing this, something very risky, that they literally have the power to bring people back from the dead. Risky move, writing team, risky move. We're teleported to some wanky dream world or some shit to fight Jenova Dreamweaver, a boss fight whose only high point is that cool rendition of Jenova when it kicks in during phase 3. Even I marked out, but beyond the surface of this cool moment is a river of shit, and it's about to flood. Exactly who is and isn't Sephiroth is difficult enough to guess in the original unless you watched a recap or played it recently, because I don't know about you, but I always bloody well forget. So it's nice to know that it's basically irrelevant now, and that my comprehension of the plot isn't really that bad a thing, because having to see him so much makes him boring at this point anyway. Any mystique that this guy had is long gone now. Rufus, however, is pretty cool. He shows up, fights us, has a cool white jacket, and counters our moves. And then we beat him and he flies off in a helicopter, and he's now Mr. Shinra. The escape sequence is an exciting finish. Wedge also died off camera. He got, oh Jesus, the plot scrotums, they grabbed him, I didn't get it, I accidentally skipped the scene, but they take him and they shoot him out of one of the top floors of the fucking Shinra building. So I think that the implication is that he died a fucking gruesome death. Jesus, and he had this long arc about, I just want to be useful, and he helps out a little bit, and it's like, okay, the plot is done with you, and they just throw him out the window. God, I imagine he'll probably come back at some point, but if he doesn't, oh man. It's a good thing nobody bloody well remembers, because Jesse and Winning were the funny ones. Well, either way, calling this the chapter wherein everything goes off the rails seems a little disingenuous, mainly because it was never on the rails to begin with. It started off them and it finishes off them. This chapter is just where it becomes 100% obvious and they stop with the pretense. It's also the chapter wherein multiple millions of people gave up on this remake entirely, leading to the hemorrhage in sales, I guess. Oh, it's that. All's forgiven. I don't know, man. At this point, I'm thinking, well, you're obviously changing shit. So yeah, just go all in, keep Zack alive. Just do it before I lose interest. Why does nobody ask Aerith how she knows all this shit? There's this tacit implication that runs throughout the whole game that everybody knows that this is all weird and wonky and wanky, but it's only now that it's outright stated, and everyone's so weirdly cool with it. It's like, oh, Sephiroth is gonna hurt the planet. He's a big threat. Why? Aerith said so. Yeah, but Aerith's kind of mysterious. Should we trust her? Yeah. Well, okay then, let's go. Either way, Aerith tells us that we have to change fate and fight Sephiroth, and I guess everything up until now is just kind of whatever at this point. This is our new goal in life. Sephi has a funny quirk now, actually. I already found him boring. Caius Ballard from 13-2 is better, and I've been saying this for years. Never got the appeal of Sephiroth, I should say. I'm going to say it now, he's overrated to me. I think he's overrated. I think he's nothing more than your typical overpowered edgelord who speaks in flowery, pretentious bullshit language. I think that makes me a bit of a hypocrite, but still, the other stuff mainly, and that not so much. But people loved him when they were kids because he killed a big fucking snake in the marshlands or whatever, and we couldn't go through without dying. And now he's even worse though. That's the thing, he's worse. At least in the OG, he had some depth. The original game gave him something in the way of depth and character writing. Not much, but some. Even if it was just, yo, I'm the best soldier ever, and I went crazy and I'm bad now. Mother, Cloud, and mother. Now he's just relegated to the gatekeeper of fucking padding and filler. Sorry, Destiny's Crossroads. More like Destiny Islands. This multiverse crap, but it sure is Kino crap. Look at this guy. He even looks like that thing from Dive Into the Heart. Look at this guy. So, by the time we see Red running like in the original ending, and Red tells us that the plot scrotums are the arbiters of fate in whispers, this twist of sorts is less a twist and more like a diagnosis of a cancer you were already 99% sure was there. Chapter 18 is the relief of the final whistle after watching your team get fucking battered 5-0. But instead of scoring a consolation goal, you let in a 6th. The scrotums are literally manifestations of destiny, of the PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy VII game, trying to steer the events of the remake in the direction of the original, even though by this point, we are already so far beyond any reconciliation, beyond the pale with that iconic PS1 game, that it's kinda useless now. And trust me, that gets way worse than the sequel, which is also why I'm going to enjoy it so much. I'll explain in a bit. So the whole point of the ending is that Sephiroth is ruining time and destiny, and yet Sephi wasn't even a known quantity at this point in the original. We have to stop him because he's a bad destiny or something. And so we warp to, I don't even fucking know, is it a parallel world? Or is it just a symbolic portal? Is it a mirage? It's a JRPG, it doesn't even matter. The writers don't even know, I imagine. It doesn't matter. The quote about not changing anything drastically keeps circling around my... Wait, that's a siren outside. Oh, the timing, man. The quote about not changing anything drastically keeps circling around my mind. Basically, as the cheap triumphant music blares during Barrett's speech, and I can imagine what those out-of-touch boomers at Square were thinking when they imagined the response. Well, this is so Kino, oh my god, I'm gonna save Era from the sequel. I just paid fucking $50,000 for 10 hours of... No. The Kino is elsewhere. Why? We then fight the Whispers ourselves, after which Cloud and Sephiroth have a fight in some spacey pocket dimension, and then Sephiroth says, 7 seconds to the end, which means literally nothing to anyone, and it's just more cryptic bollocks to make this abomination of a main story seem somewhat deep and profound, when in reality it's just nostalgia bait. No, nostalgia bait and switch. Oh, that's going on the thumbnail. After defeating Sephiroth, they finally go all the way with it. Well, not really, but it's implied that Zack survived, meaning we must have changed to an alternate timeline. They show Zack having fought off the people who killed him. All of modern Square Enix's bullshit comes to the surface, and we finally get this. So we leave Midgar after a nice set of speeches by everyone. Aerith says she doesn't like the sky, and Hollow Skies plays us out. But that ain't all.
Go on again, fully wrecked at the Happy Turtle!
Admittedly, post-release DLC isn't something I enjoy when it's made to compensate for a lack of substance within a game, especially when that substance is artificially extracted. But as a fun little aside, I can sort of stubbornly let it slide. Luckily for me, it came with the PS5 version, only further reinforcing my stance that you should never ever buy a video game on release. It's not just that they're unfinished, it's that they're probably designed to be unfinished, these modern video games. I'll be honest, there's no probably about it. It's insidious. Modern gaming sucks. As DLC goes though, I can forgive episode Yuffie because it's surprisingly fun, and unlike the main game, it's dreadfully honest about what it is and what it sets out to do, and what you can expect from it while you play, because it's the video game equivalent of a sandwich and a good shit afterwards. But I won't be harping on it, so let's summarize very briefly. Yuffie is on a mission to link up with an avalanche cell that didn't exist until this DLC was created. She has to team up with literally Chad. Literally, Chad is cool and reliable. He's like a big brother. You get to explore Sector 7 and meet some characters who are dead now, which is nice and also sad. You can also play them at a brand new minigame called Fort Condor, which is based off of a minigame in the original, but this one is a card game now. I'll detail it in the sequel when I'm discussing the 5,000 minigames in Rebirth. There are some other things to prolong the experience a bit more, like collecting vouchers for the Happy Turtle, and there's some cool new music for the Turtle place too. For a long time I didn't get the whole turtle thing until Scarlet said this. At the Happy Turtle. Eventually we infiltrate Shinra HQ and have to fight Scarlet. I'll give her a due. For a psychopathic arsehole, she's willing to fight us herself, as long as she's got some sort of robo-weapon. But also Vice, we have to fight him too, and some other bellend from Dirge of Cerberus. And then Vice kills literally Chad, which is literally sad. Combat, quite naturally, is a lot more easy and simplistic on account of having just the one playable character and one other party member. And it will give you a good bit of practice actually for Rebirth when Yuffie becomes a permanent party member. All in all, it's a quite upbeat and then somewhat emotional at the end DLC. It's very serviceable. But its main function was as an add-on for the INTERGRADE version of the game, which is a PS5 exclusive, which is stupid. Someone tells me they're not going to do that much anymore after Rebirth tanked, but I'm sure we can put all that consumerist console war bollocks aside and just agree on that much at least, right? Also, this happens at the end.
I'm back!
What a buzzkill. It's difficult to say much about this without spoiling the sequel, but we gotta commit it to memory so that we can retread the minefield in the Rebirth video. The idea is, Zack's alive, I've gotta play the next one now because Zack's fucking alive, man. And that's obviously what they want you to go with. That's where they want your mind to go. There's no getting around it. So we'll keep that in mind as we move on to the next game, when I feel sane enough to do it. So it's multiverse shit. It's really hilariously simple when it comes down to it. I like to imagine the people buying this game as a casual thinking, oh shit, I played the original when I was younger, I'm gonna grab that, that looks really cool. I imagine they had fond memories of the Gold Saucer and Cosmo Canyon, Costa del Sol, seeing the big remake title on the case, only to have to slowly grapple with the fact that it's only the first installment in a supposed trilogy of remakes, which I've never even seen confirmed, but even then it would mean nothing from these lying developers. More honest marketing would have been some other name, like maybe Final Fantasy VII Reimagined, or perhaps Episode 1 or Part 1 tacked onto that, just to indicate that it was a part of a remake series and not the whole thing. The question is, was it fair to assume that this would be a remake of the entire original? Yeah, it's fair. That's how remake slop has worked since they started getting shoved down our throats. And though I have mentioned not being a purist, knowing that literally millions of people were waiting for this for decades upon decades, following it through development hell on multiple different consoles, only to finally receive what they thought was the definitive remake of their childhood favourite, possibly based upon an exact quote by the developers stating they wouldn't change anything drastically, and at the height of the pandemic no less, when, you know, our games are really important to us, only to then realise, as they fucking played it, that the developer had lied to them, and all they were getting was the first 5 hours or so of the original, while padded to hell and back in such a disgustingly transparent way. It's also fucking awful that this spectre of dishonesty still hangs over every single fun moment that I mentioned, creating that feeling of guilt, of every moment of charm and fun and funniness and warmth. This grey cloud of deception looms perpetually above, ready to rain down on us with piss. And thanks to the weird nature of this game's development and the sheer number of developers working on it, knowing who exactly is responsible for both the awful stuff and the good stuff is a mystery that probably won't ever be solved. This game is a mess, but it's sometimes stupidly fun. This game is a lie, but sometimes it's 21st century Kino. The thing is, given all the lies, who's to even say it's a trilogy? I alluded to it earlier, but what if they just keep going with it? At the time of writing this very outro, I saw another quote from one of the 5,000 developers the other day, saying maybe they'll continue it in some ways, if the fans want it. But sales don't suggest nearly as much, because they'd announce those sales if they hit certain milestones. We know game companies love to wank themselves off and say, we hit this many million. So the fact is that this game is a microcosm of Square's fading relevance, and part of the cause of it. Even they don't know exactly what they're going to do. It's just not a ride I want to get off just yet. Even if it is a mess, even if it is a bumpy ride, the most fun rides always are. I accept what it is, I'll bash it when it's shit and I'll praise it when it's good, but the fact is, with Final Fantasy XVI selling like crap, this project is the project for Square Enix, and we might be witnessing history here. I'm not being dramatic, I mean as in either the revival or the final death knell for the cultural stock that Final Fantasy and Square Enix holds in the modern day. After Rebirth, and I'll detail why when we get there, I'm checked out of any super emotional connection to the story, and I'm mainly just here for the sheer absurdity of the whole situation. It's the vibes, isn't it? It's like a drug. It's the best thing in the world and it's the worst, depending on just the flip of a coin. So with the ending cutscene showing winning, having survived, alongside Zack, the only pull they have at the end of this game, the hook, to get people to invest in a sequel, is teasing the player with the idea that they could change even more than this. Now I'm going to spoil the beginning of the sequel here, so you've been warned, but the honest truth is, even this is a lie. Sorta. What we're actually seeing, and it's only revealed if you buy the next game, is an alternate timeline. At least that's how it's presented there. They could always bait and switch that too, and change their mind in the third game. So even this is based on deception. The obvious hook though, deep down, is can we save Aerith? But by the end of said sequel, you might be very understandably asking yourself, just as I did, do I even give a shit anymore? Or am I just here for the craziness? We'll see. But to reiterate, like I said way earlier on, it ain't the fact they changed shit, it's the fact they lied. But still, it's a fun fucking lie. Gotta know how it ends, man.
Yeah,